flown by. Right, Jason here from, let's see if I can get this right. No, from, everything's back to front and mirrored in the screen. Anyway, it's Jason from septictank.co.uk. And I'm doing a live broadcast today to answer all of your questions. And so let's get straight into this. All right. So Barry. All right, Barry. Right, let's have a look. Barry's asking me, okay, so you're connected to your neighbour's system. You've fallen out with them. It's becoming a nightmare. How can you cut yourself off from your neighbour's septic tank? Well, okay, very good question. And thank you for asking that question. Do you know what, Barry? I was in exactly the same situation. And in fact, that's how I got into septic tanks, because of that situation. All right, so let me explain. If I explain my dilemma to you and how I managed to find a solution, then you'll know how I actually got into the septic tank game. All right, so let me just show you this scenario here. And this is true, by the way. This is really how I got into the septic tank business. So, oh, my black pen has run out, so it's going to have to be in blue. Let's try in blue. All right, so let's say this is house number 1. All right. I know you don't get many blue houses, but my black pen's run out. Okay, so that's house number 1. Then we've got, all right, so I used to live in a house that was part of Victorian terraced. It was almost like a Victorian terraced house that I lived in, right? And how many houses can I get on there? The walls weren't quite as crooked as in my picture here, but all right, so this was my situation. In fact, how much room have I got? Okay, let me do one more, because there was 4 houses that were part of this Victorian terraced kind of block that we lived in. And here was the garden. Now, each of the gardens was about 150 foot long, something like that. And the septic tank, well, actually, it wasn't even a septic tank. It was a cesspool. As you know, a cesspool is a sealed unit. Now, the cesspool was buried in number 1. So this was number 1. That's number 2. Number 3 is where I lived, and number 4 is where Jim lived. That's where Andy lived. I can even remember their names 20 years on. Well, at least my memory's still working. Anyway, for some odd reason, right, which I won't go into because it's very convoluted, but the cesspool was located in the garden of number 1. And what happened was this, right? Everyone used to feed into, well, everyone's house used to feed into the cesspool that was in the garden of number 1. All right, so you have to forget. You can see why I never took A-level art, can't you? But all right, you get the point. So let's just try and tidy this up a bit. There we go. Okay. Okay. So look, you get the point, right? So everyone's wastewater used to leave their house, right, and head down towards and into the pipe of number one, right? And all the wastewater from all the houses would end up here in number one's cesspool. Now, that cesspool may seem quite small to you there, and I'm not kidding, it was small. In fact, it was so small, right, that I got married and I moved within a week of getting married. My wife and I lived together in this house, right? We moved in there. And within a week of moving in, I started getting these bills through the door for like 50 quid a week. And I'm like, what's that for? And after doing a bit of research and investigation, it was my part share of what it costed for house number one to get her cesspool emptied. Now, I was paying 50 quid, Jim was paying 50 quid, Andy was paying 50 quid, and the lady whose garden the cesspool was in was also paying 50 quid. So it was costing us collectively, right, £200 a week, or £800 a month to get their cesspool emptied. Now, I'd never been connected to someone else's system before, so it's like, all right, this must be normal, I think. But within 6 months, right, it went up from 50 quid a week to £90 a week. That's everyone. I was having to pay 90, Jim was paying 90, Andy was paying 90, this lady here, a week, right? It went up from £200 a week to £400 a week. And if you're wondering why it went up and jumped up so much, it was because the council, who had deemed it was a logical, sensible thing to put this cesspool in the garden of number one, they'd taken away their subsidy or their grant. So when they took that away, it literally put another £200 a week onto the cost of getting the cesspool empty. So I had 2 kids, right? I just got married. I was trying to start a new job, and I was having to pay £90 a week just to get this cesspool emptied. Now, that worked out, right? Collectively, we were paying £1,600 a month to get this cesspool emptied. Now, the tanker people who were emptying it were like rubbing their hands, you know, in glee. And it just blew my mind, right? And so it became my mission in life to find out why we were all connected to this one system. Why didn't I have my own system? Why didn't Andy have his own system? Why didn't Jim have his own tank? And no one would tell me why. I rang the council up and they said, well, you know, we deemed that was the best logical step. Well, basically, what it boiled down to, the council didn't want to spend the money of putting individual tanks in each garden. So it was easier just to run pipes from each house into one single tank. That's what it boiled down to in the end. Not that I'm slating the council for doing that, but I'm just telling you that's why they came to the conclusion and the decision that they did. Right, okay, so I'm in a dilemma now, right? It's 6 months and it's gone up to £90. And the tanker people were telling us the costs are going to rise again because the sewage yard where they dump all the waste from sucking the wastewater out, we're going up too. Now, also, because this was a sealed unit, right? The more water we all used, the quicker it would fill up. Now, Andy next door, good lad Andy was, and his wife, I think it's Julie, her name was, they had 7 kids. And so they were bathing these kids 7 times a day. And no, that's great. I'm not knocking on but I'm just saying that that's what they were doing in their household. So 7 baths, right, of water going into there times 7 is 23, 21 bath loads of water. And we were trying to economize, but you know, when you got kids, you've got kids, you know, you've just got to do what you've got to do. It's hard to economize, you know. And so this was the predicament I was in. And after I couldn't find a way out of this, right? I rang people, builders up, they came around and said, oh no, mate, can't do this, can't do that, blah, 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 blah. And the situation literally made my wife ill. Oh, I couldn't stand it anymore, right? Then one day I saw in the Yellow Pages an ad for a sewage consultant. And I got him round, had his hands in his pockets, and he looked at the situation, and he said, why don't you put your own septic tank in? I said, what? He said, why don't you put your own septic tank in, mate? I thought, blimey, I'd never thought of that. Can I? Yeah, obviously you'll have to find out how to do it, mate, and all that. You know, I can do it for you. I'm going back 20 years ago now, and I think he wanted 9 grand to do it. I didn't have that kind of money. I was struggling to pay 90 quid a week. Never mind for being fined 9 grand on the house. In fact, it was so bad, as I remember, just going off on a tangent, Andy and Julie, they couldn't afford to pay the 90 quid every week. So the council, for some reason, I can't exactly remember why now, they put an order on their house, and they owed like 10, 15 grand in emptying costs that they couldn't afford to pay, that the council were paying for them, but putting it like a charge on their house that they had to pay if they ever came to sell the house. It was a crazy situation. We were all ill, never mind me. Anyway, he said, yeah, why don't you put your own tank in? And I said to my wife, I said, listen, you know, he said, why don't we put our own tank in? So I started doing some research. I got building regs. I read all through building regs, rang up all the environmental agency, had them round, rang the council up, had them round. Anyway, long and short of it was, 6 months later, I knew all the regulations in and out. I knew what to do. I knew what tank I needed. I knew what soakaway I needed. I knew the distance it had to be from the house, dum-de-dum-de-dum, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I knew what permissions I had to get. I knew what tank I wanted. I knew what digger I needed. So I saved up, and that's exactly what I did. I got there were some fields at the back of the gardens here. There were some fields. So I asked the guy, I said, listen, can I, you know, do you mind if the lorry and all that comes through your field to drop at the back of the garden the tank and the shingle and the pipes and this and that and all the stuff, and even the digger had to come in that way. And so that's what I did. The weekend, I managed to, in fact, I got myself a septic tank and dug a big hole, put the septic tank in here. I then dug a trench, put a pipe there, had a manhole chamber, and then I created my own herringbone soakaway system, something like that. Okay, and then this was the crowning moment, right? I cut myself off from there, from the pipe going into her tank, and I ran a pipe straight from our house straight into my septic tank. One of the best things I'd ever accomplished. One of the best moments of my life, that was, you know, because it was a hell of an undertaking. You know, I'd never done it before. It looked like the Somme, those diggers and, oh man, and holes and piles of earth everywhere and neighbours looking out the window, and I was thinking, oh crud, what have I done? But anyway, listen, I did it all on my own, right? And it was amazing. My wife and I were stood in the garden with a glass of wine, surveying everything that I'd done, and it was amazing. And from that moment, I didn't have to pay 90 quid a week anymore. Oh right, it was amazing. Absolutely, it was an amazing feeling. If you're wondering about this little crossover here, the pipes